All right, guys, analytical geometry. We have done some geometry already this year, right? That was Euclidean geometry. Can we focus, please? Euclidean geometry. So that is where we worked with calculating angles. We did the circle stuff. We worked with theorems and so on. Analytical geometry is completely different. Analytical geometry is actually on the Cartesian plane. So when I say Cartesian plane, I'm talking about the x-axis and the y-axis, right? So in analytical geometry, the other name for it is coordinate geometry. We're going to be working with points, right? So we're going to have shapes, and all of the points or the vertices of the shapes are going to have coordinates, and we're going to work with those, with x and y values. Okay, so this is completely different from the geometry that we've done already, okay? You've never actually done analytical geometry before. It's not super difficult. There are a few formulas that you need to know and be able to apply. And then, yeah, we'll look at some more complicated questions, but it's really not that bad. Okay, I think you guys will be okay with it. So first we're going to talk about the distance formula. I'm just going to unfreeze there. Sorry about that beam of light there. Now the distance formula you need to memorize, right? In grade 10, you don't get a formula sheet, or you don't get a list of formulas. You need to actually memorize all of the formulas that we're going to be doing. So if you have 2 points, so I'm going to write here the distance between let's say point A, and I'm going to write that the coordinates of this point will be the x value of A, so I'm going to write it like this. But obviously when we're doing questions, we're going to have a number for that, right? So the x value and the y value. So the x value of A and then the y value of A. So those are the coordinates of point A. And then we're going to have point B, which has an x value of B and then also a y value of B. Now there are two ways in which we could write this. You can say D, lowercase d, for distance, or you can write AB. So basically the two end points of that line, right? If you have point A and you connect it to point B, we would call that line AB, right? Do we understand that? So we can say AB as well. And the formula for this, guys, is going to be the square root of, in brackets, you're going to take the x value of the 1 point. So let's say we're starting with A, minus the x value of the other point. So you're finding the difference between the two x values. And you're squaring it. And then you're going to add to that the difference between the two y values. And that is the formula. If you want to, you can swap the coordinates around. So you can start with the x value of B minus the x value of A, but then you must do the same with the y values as well. So I'm going to write here, that will also be equal to, it will give you the same answer if you're starting with the coordinates of B first. Now, instead of asking for the distance between 2 points, they can maybe ask you for the length of a line. Can we quickly think, would that be the same thing? If you have point A and you have point B, right? Let's make a point there and a point there. That is A and that is B. The distance between these 2 points, right, would be the length of that line. Do we agree with that? So they might not always say distance. They might not always ask you for the distance between 2 points. They can also ask you for the length of a side of a triangle or the length of a line. All right, so I'm just going to add here, or length of line AB. So this formula is going to come in handy when they're asking us maybe for the perimeter of a shape. How do you find the perimeter of any shape? You just add all the sides together, right? So they can give you any shape and they can give you the coordinates of the points of that shape, ask you for the perimeter. You're then going to have to calculate the lengths of all of the sides, however many there are, and then add them all together. Okay, so it's not always going to be straightforward, find the distance or find the length. Sometimes they're going to ask you for something like perimeter or area, and then you need to find the lengths of the sides before you can do that, but we will do examples like that. Okay, let's do a basic example quickly just so that you can see exactly how this formula is applied. All right, copy that down, please. No. Usually for these questions, they give you a picture because usually they ask a whole bunch of questions about one diagram.
And then they'll give you the coordinates at point A. Do we have to write the formula before we write?
Yeah.
You give us the two things.
This one here. So in the first equation, we're starting with the x value of A and the y value of A, and then we're subtracting the coordinates of B. But in the second one, we're starting with the coordinates of B, and we're subtracting the ones of A. You can decide. Yeah, you'll get the same answer. All right, let's quickly do this example. Thank you. All right, so now you can write D or you can write AB. I usually write AB because normally in questions, they won't just ask you for one of them. They might ask you for multiple different lengths, or you will have to calculate multiple different lengths. So then it's good to just identify which one you're working with. So AB is equal to, now Tess already asked whether you have to write the formula before you use it. You don't have to. You will get a mark for the substitution into the formula. So that you have to show, all right? So you have to show square root, and then you put your bracket. Do we want to start with the values of A? Is that fine with everyone? All right, so I'm going to start with the x value of A, and I'm going to minus the x value of B from that. So I'm going to say -6 minus 7 squared. It's important to remember to square that bracket, plus -3 minus 2 squared. So you do x minus x squared plus y minus y squared. And then obviously that is the square root of that whole thing. And guys, that you can just type into your calculator. For this line, you will actually get 2 marks, right? You will get 1 mark for knowing the formula. Because if we can see that you've substituted the values correctly, obviously you know what the formula is, right? And the second mark will be for the actual substitution of the values. So this one line is worth 2 marks. And then your final answer, once you've typed that in, you might get a third answer in the calculator, which is fine. So the square root of 194. Is that coming up as something different for any of you? Let me just quickly see. If it can be simplified, the calculator, no, it comes up like that. Sometimes the calculator will give you simplified third form. If we come across a question like that, I'll just show you what I mean by that. But that is what the answer is there. Now, guys, usually in a test or exam, in the main instructions, right? They say round all answers to 2 decimal places. So this isn't wrong, but they actually want your answer rounded to 2 decimal places. Because guys, if you're just thinking we're calculating the length of a side, right? And now someone asks you, what is the length of AB? And you say it's the square root of 194 units. No one's going to know what that means, right? So when you have that answer on the calculator, square root of 194, press the S to D button, that is surd to decimal. And then that is what you need to write down as your final answer, okay? So 13,93 units. And this is the final answer, so we are allowed to round off there. Yes?
Do we have to put the surd then, or should we do all three?
You can just go straight to 13,93, yeah. So guys, you don't even have to write this down. You can go straight to 13,93 as your answer. That's also fine. Now, what I just want to say is when we get to, we're actually going to do a question like this next. When you just have to calculate a whole bunch of different lengths, thank you, in order to do something in the end, right? To find the perimeter or whatever. Remember guys, you're only allowed to round off in your final answer, right? So if this was just one of, say, 3 sides that we had to find, I would actually leave it as the square root of 194 there. Because if I type in the square root of 194, that is the full unrounded answer, and it will give me a more accurate value than if I type in 13,93. Okay, so I'm just going to make a note here at the end. Let's also give a mark there, because that would be worth the 3rd mark. And let's just remind ourselves, we spoke about this in finance quite a bit, but only round off in final answer. Guys, can we please stop talking? It's very distracting if I can hear you speaking the whole time. Otherwise, I'm going to have to move you if you can't control yourselves. Right, is that fine, guys? We always need to remember this, please. It's not just in this section, it's in all sections. When you have to do in-between calculations, you only round off in the final answer. Okay, we're going to do another example now. I just want to point out, guys, that if you decided to start with the values of B first and subtract the A values from that, you would get the same answer. But then you would have to say 7 minus negative 6, which is actually 7 plus 6. Okay, that is very important, guys. You are always subtracting those values, whether they're positive or negative. You always minus, and if it's negative, then you must put a second set of brackets around that. Okay. All right, example 2, unfortunately we're going to have to draw a little Cartesian plane here, but I promise I'm not going to make you guys do too many of these. All right, so I'm just going to say given triangle ABC below, show that triangle ABC is a right angle triangle. just let me know if there are any of those values that you can't read. Yes. All right, so this question is not asking outright for any lengths or any distances, right? They've given us a triangle. They've given us the coordinates of the 3 vertices, the 3 points of that triangle, and they're asking us to show that ABC is a right angle triangle. Now, guys, there is actually more than one way of doing this, but just because we've done distance formula, we're going to do the distance or the length way of proving this, and then when we get to gradient later on, we'll look at that again. But what we can do is we can find the 3 lengths of these sides, and then we can use converse Pythag to prove whether it's a right angle triangle. Does that ring a bell at all? Do you guys remember doing that last year? Where you find the length of the 3 sides, or you have the length of the 3 sides, and then you check whether Pythagoras works, right? Whether the longest side squared is in fact equal to the sum of the other 2 sides squared, because if that is true, then it has to be a right angle triangle. Okay, Pythagoras only works in a right angle triangle. So we show that Pythagoras works, which means that it has to be a right angle triangle. Okay, so I'm just going to make a note here at the top. Well, actually just next to this, I'm going to write here converse Pythag. Now it is going to become quite important, especially further down the line, when you have a whole bunch of different formulas and different things that you can do. Before you start calculating things, if you just actually ask yourself, what do I need to prove this? Okay, because obviously we've just done distance formula, so we're going to use it. But if you have 10 different formulas that you could use, you need to first think, okay, to answer this question, what do I actually need to calculate? Instead of just blindly starting to calculate things. All right, so my thought process is here. I'm going to use converse Pythag. So what do I need? All 3 sides. Okay, I'm going to write there, therefore, need all 3 sides. It's okay if you can't remember how to use converse Pythag. We are going to write that out in full now. But the first thing, guys, and I would like you to do this on your own quickly, please. We need to calculate all 3 sides, the lengths of all 3 sides. Some of you have probably already started doing that. So you're going to find AB, you're going to find BC, and then you're going to find AC. All 3 of those lengths using the distance formula. Okay, do that quickly, please. Now, guys, for these, I suggest leaving them in surd form because we're going to have to use the lengths to do more calculations. Okay, so instead of writing them in decimal form, write the lengths in surd form. All right, do we have some answers? Okay, that's what I got. You can just take a look. Now guys, this 3 root 10 and 2 root 10, that's what I meant by simplified surd form. Because if you just actually calculate what is in this, the square root, I'll be with you now, Catherine, then that is 90, right? So some of you might do that. Some of you might just type in what is under the square root and then get 90 and then write the square root of 90. That's fine. It's the same thing. All right, the calculator just takes out the 9. So it basically writes 90 as 9 times 10, and then it says 9 has a square root of 3, so I'm going to take that out, and 10 doesn't have a square root, so they're going to leave that in. All right, next year in grade 11, that is actually a section that you're also going to do, which is simplifying surds. Okay, so for now, you can write either square root of 90 or 3 root 10, both are correct. Yes? It's not wrong. They might take off 1 mark in the whole test if you do that every time. Okay, so yeah, just try and remember to put in units. All right, now guys, we've calculated the sides, but we haven't actually answered the question, right? They need us, thank you, to prove that this is a right angle triangle. Now, the way that converse Pythag works is you need to identify, not really by looking at the picture, because remember they often say it's not drawn to scale. Right? You need to identify by looking at the lengths which one of these 3 sides would be the hypotenuse if this was a right angle triangle. Because remember, how does Pythag work? The hypotenuse squared is equal to the sum of the other 2 squares added together, right? So we need to calculate, or we need to determine by looking at these 3 lengths. Do we remember the hypotenuse is always the longest side? Right, so we need to see, we can't see which one is the hypotenuse because we don't know where the 90-degree angle would be in this triangle. I mean, we can guess. It kind of looks like it's going to be at B, right? So it looks like AC is going to be the longest side, but we can't make that assumption by looking at the picture. We need to look at the values that we have. Now, unfortunately, guys, here, if we're looking at these 2 sides, can we see which one of these 2 is the longest one? What do we think? 3 times root 10 or 2 times root 10? 3 times root 10, right? 3 multiplied by a number is always going to be 2 multiplied by that same number. All right, so out of these 2, that one is definitely longer, but now we don't know what that is. Okay, so if you get this, unfortunately, I know we said let's not write them in decimal form, but now we actually do have to calculate that to identify the longest side. All right, so we basically need to see out of these ones, 3 root 2 and root 130, which one is the longest. Okay, so what you're going to do is you're going to type in 3 root 10, press equals, and then you're going to press ST. 9,49, right? I'm just going to write that on the side. If you want to, we don't have to, but if you want to, you can calculate 2 root 10 as well. That's 6,32. Again, why did I not need to calculate this one? Because I know that this one is not the longest side. Right? Because that one, AB, is definitely longer than BC. Okay, so that's why I said we don't have to calculate this one, but you can if you want to. And then the square root of 130, 11,40. Okay, so which one is the longest, guys? AC. Okay, so I'm going to write next to this one. Fine. You shouldn't. So then you would say 3 plus 8 squared plus 0 minus 3 squared. It has to be root 130. You must have just typed something wrong. So just double check that again. All right, thank you. Okay, now we need to do the converse Pythag calculation. So guys, when we are jumping, can we stop talking please, to a completely new calculation, I suggest just leaving open a line, right? Just from remembering marking tests and stuff last term, it's just easier for the marker to follow what you're doing if you just actually leave a gap now, because we're going to be doing something different. Okay, so we're going to say longest side squared. That's always how you start off. You identify the longest side and then you square it. That is going to give us 130. Right? Because we're saying the square root of 130 squared. So the square root and the square are going to cancel each other out. Okay, so that's 130. So I'm just going to write on the side here, this is longest side squared. Now, completely separately, right, in a completely new line, I'm not going to put an equals in front of it. I'm going to start from scratch. I'm going to add the other two sides squared together. So I'm now going to say AB squared plus BC squared and now this you're probably going to have to put into your calculator, right? Now, when you are doing this calculation, when you put 3 root 10 squared, you have to put a bracket, please, and then 3 root 10. Press your arrow to get out from underneath the square root, close your bracket and square it. Plus, the other one was 2 root 10, right? So we do the same thing. Bracket, 2 root 10, arrow to get out from underneath the square root, bracket again, and then we square it. And there we are going to get the same answer. Again, 130. Okay, so this is, yeah, let's leave it like that. That's just the other two sides added together. Now, guys, since these two are equal to each other, and this is just a notation thing, obviously we can see that they're both equal to the same number. We actually get a mark for now writing down that they're equal to each other. Okay, so please, you have to get full marks, you have to say, therefore, AC squared is equal to AB squared plus BC squared. Therefore, triangle ABC is right angled, or is a right angled triangle if you want. That's also fine. And now it's very important, guys, that here we actually have to write a reason. We have to say converse Pythagoras. Okay. So that's how converse Pythag always works, guys. You can't write it like this. I'm going to write it down and then I'm going to erase it straight away because it's wrong if you do that. If you just start off by saying immediately AC squared is equal to AB squared plus BC squared, you're going to get 0. Okay, you actually first have to show what AC squared is equal to, then separately what AB squared plus BC squared is equal to, and only then can you state they are equal. Okay, you can't start off just by writing that down. All right, any questions on this? Okay, I'm going to give you guys a few questions to practice just on using the distance formula, and then that's it for today. Okay, so let me just quickly